Her stepfather yanked her by the hair and shoved her to the floor. Clara May was only 21. Her beauty felt more like a curse than a gift. Frank Dalton, her mother's second husband, was a man rotted clear through. He had gambled away his last coin and drowned his soul in whiskey. By midday, the moneylenders were already crowding outside their broken cabin. Frank dragged Clara out into the blinding heat. His eyes burned with rage and shame. "Serve them," he spat. Clara froze in horror. She could not believe the words. Her own stepfather wanted her to give herself to the men who came to claim his debts. She shook her head. Her voice cracked. "No, I won't." That refusal set fire to Frank's pride. The men laughed. Frank's ego shattered like glass. He hurled his bottle against the wall. Shards flew across the room. He stomped forward and struck Clara so hard she collapsed against the wooden planks. She tried to crawl, but his boot slammed into her ribs. The men leaned against the doorframe, smirking at her misery. Frank's drunken rage only grew hotter. "You dare defy me?" he growled. He dragged her into the sunlit yard. Her dress ripped, her skin bruised, her face streaked with tears. Clara cried for mercy, but Frank had none left. The lenders followed, jeering. Frank shoved her toward the creek near the open fields. The sun scorched her pale skin, making every wound sting sharper. Her legs buckled. She begged again, "Please, please don't." Her pleas only deepened his shame. In one cruel motion, he lifted her by the waist and hurled her into the water. The creek swallowed her whole. Her lungs filled with icy current. She kicked, clawed, desperate for life, but her torn dress tangled her like chains. Her strength drained fast. The laughter above the water faded to muffled echoes. Her heart thundered, vision fading. Was this the end? And then a shadow moved at the bank. A horse snorted, boots hit the dirt. A man sprinted into the creek without a second thought. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to shore. Her body lay limp, but her eyes flickered with the will to live. He laid her on the grass as she coughed and gasped. Her lips trembled, words stuck in her throat. The man's eyes widened at the sight of her wounds. This was Samuel Briggs, a rancher in his late 50s. He stared at the fragile girl before him, his jaw tight. What sort of monster would do this to his own child? And what awaited her now, with Frank Dalton still lurking? Samuel lifted her gently, carried her to his horse, and galloped back to his homestead. Inside the old ranch house, he laid her near the fire, wrapping her in a blanket. But her body shivered with fever. He fetched an old shirt from his chest. "You need this more than I do," he said softly. Clara hesitated, then slipped it on. The sleeves swallowed her hands. For the first time in years, she felt the faint trace of safety. She clutched the fabric close as the fire crackled. Tears rolled down her face. "For years, she beat me. For years, I prayed it would stop." Samuel clenched his fists, silent with fury. "And today, he wanted me to serve his collectors. I said no. That's when he beat me harder than ever. Then he threw me away like garbage." Her words weighed heavy. Samuel's jaw tightened. Clara's voice broke again. Maybe I was cursed. Maybe my life had no meaning. But when you pulled me out, I felt like maybe God still remembered me. Samuel rested his rough hand gently on hers. You didn't deserve a single bit of it, he said. The warmth in his tone shattered her walls. She wept harder. For the first time, she felt she wasn't alone. But Frank Dalton wasn't finished. He never was. The next morning, Clara sat at the window wrapped in Samuel's shirt. She looked out at the fields, fragile but safe. Samuel brought her tea. She managed a soft smile, though her eyes held storms. Then hoofs thundered at the gate. Frank Dalton swung off his horse with the arrogance of a man who thought he owned the earth. "Where is she?" he barked. Samuel stood firm in the doorway. "She's not yours anymore." Frank laughed, a hollow, whiskey-soaked laugh. "You think you can keep her from me? She belongs to me, always will." From inside, Clara's trembling voice cut through. "No, not anymore." Samuel's arms folded across his chest. "You best ride on before I lose my patience." Frank cursed, spat in the dirt, and rode away, for now. Samuel turned to Clara. "This isn't over. He'll come back, and when he does, he won't come alone." "What can we do?" she whispered. Samuel thought for a long moment. "There's one man who can help, Sheriff McCoy." Later that day, Samuel told the sheriff everything. The beatings, the debts, the river. The sheriff's stern face softened. "Bring her under my protection. If Dalton shows again, he'll answer to the law." Samuel returned with hope, but he knew men like Frank rarely gave up. They always came back, and when they did, there'd be a reckoning. Before we step into that storm, let me pause. If Clara's fight and Samuel's courage have touched you, please subscribe so you won't miss what happens next, and drop a comment. It helps keep stories like this alive. Night fell over the ranch. Clara sat by the fire, hands gripping her cup. Samuel paced the room. Then hoofs shattered the silence. Torches lit the yard. Frank Dalton stood at the front, the scarred lender beside him. Behind them, a dozen armed thugs. "Bring her out," he shouted. Samuel stepped outside, rifle in hand. "You're not taking her," he declared. Scarface sneered. "Old man, you can't fight us all." The mob rushed forward. Samuel fired a shot into the air. For a moment, they hesitated. Then they surged. Samuel swung his rifle like a club, knocking one down. Another lunged with a knife. They crashed in the dirt. Two men grabbed Clara, dragging her from the porch. She scratched, kicked, screamed. They struck her across the face. Samuel broke free, but three men piled on him, slamming him down. Blood streaked his brow. Frank towered over him, laughing. "You're finished, Briggs. Should have stayed out." Clara screamed, "Leave him alone!" Scarface yanked her hair, snarling. And then more hoofs thundered. Lantern swung. A voice boomed. "Sheriff McCoy, drop your weapons!" Deputies fanned out, rifles leveled. The gang froze. One warning shot cracked the night. Knives clattered, guns dropped, hands rose. Frank's swagger twisted into fear. Years of cruelty unraveled in seconds. The sheriff's men bound Dalton and his thugs in ropes, marching them into the dark. The yard fell quiet again. Samuel staggered up, bloodied. Clara ran to him, burying her face against his chest. For the first time, she felt truly safe. "It's over now," he whispered. "He'll never hurt you again." Tears rolled down her face, this time tears of release. The sheriff tipped his hat. "You've been through enough. Rest easy. Justice will do the rest." He rode away, leaving peace behind. At sunrise, Clara stood on the porch in Samuel's shirt, staring at the wide horizon. For the first time in years, the sky felt open, full of promise. Samuel's hand brushed hers. Their eyes met, not rescuer and victim.